Today, Pokrovsk is not a headline as much as a harrowing case study. On October the 19th, a small Russian infiltration unit slipped into the centre of the city and, according to Ukraine's 7th Corps of the Air Assault Forces, murdered civilians in working day clothes near the railway station. The aftermath, captured by Ukrainian drones, shows 3 bodies on Mostovia Lane and a wounded woman who is then carried to safety by a young man identified locally as a mine worker. Ukrainian forces subsequently located the infiltrators inside the station and eliminated them. The images are stark, the facts are consistent with unlawful killing, and the pattern is familiar. It's familiar particularly to anyone who has looked at Caelan Robertson's videos on Kherson, where he was chased down a street by a drone and where he talks about the drones that are targeting civilians. What makes Pokrovsk so chilling is not its novelty, but its normality within the war. Small reconnaissance groups slip through porous lines, while first-person view drones pin defenders in shelters. Civilians become targets of opportunity or targets by design. UN human rights monitors report that short-range drones are now the leading cause of civilian casualties near the front line, month after month, with Donetsk and Kherson consistently worst hit. In September alone, there were recorded 54 killed and 272 injured by such drones near the front, almost 30% of all civilian casualties that month. Pokrovsk sits inside precisely that statistical shadow. The brazenness is not limited to street murders. 5 days before the Pokrovsk killings, Russian kamikaze drones struck a clearly marked United Nations aid convoy at Bilozerka in Kherson, and the next day pro-war channels posted their own drone footage of the attack as a boast. No UN staff died, but the trucks were destroyed and civilians nearby were hurt. Human Rights Watch called it what it looks like under the law, a deliberate attack on humanitarian relief. Again, the method is the message. If you can hit the UN and upload the video, you are sending a signal about impunity. And let's be precise about the law. International humanitarian law prohibits the targeting of civilians, requires constant care to spare them, and bars attacks on humanitarian relief and medical units. The Rome Statute codifies these as war crimes. The International Criminal Court has already issued arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova for the unlawful deportation and abduction of children. That is not the totality of Russia's alleged crimes in Ukraine, but it is a judicial starting gun, and where states fail to punish, the ICC can act when jurisdiction lies. This is also part of the longer record. UN investigators and monitors have documented willful killings, torture, sexual violence, and the forcible transfer of children since the early months of the full-scale invasion. The overall civilian death toll is undercounted, but already in the tens of thousands. One operational trend stands out across 2024 to 2025, the industrialization of short-range drone use against civilian spaces. The moral hazard is obvious. FPV systems give operators real-time eyes, and the technology that could help discriminate is used to terrorize, as the UN has warned repeatedly. Pokrovsk also illuminates the character of the invading force. Russia's army has increasingly relied on penal units and throwaway assault groups to probe urban edges. Orders not only take prisoners that have reported being captured by Russian soldiers and surface in courtroom testimony inside Ukraine. When such groups sneak into a city and shoot passers-by on a lane by the station, it's not fog of war error. It's a tactic of cruelty. It's repeated until stopped. It's deliberate. The counter-narrative that Russia doesn't target civilians is refuted not only by independent monitors, but by attackers' own posts and videos. The Bilozerka strike was claimed and celebrated online. The same channels who one day circulate footage of residents in a ruined city waving at their liberators. We've seen this choreography from Mariupol to Tokmak. In Pokrovsk, Ukrainian units still hold the line and are evacuating when possible, yet logistics are strangled by constant FPV strikes. It's a military squeeze with civilians' throats under it. So what should justice look like here and now, not in some imagined post-war tribunal? First, meticulous evidence. Ukraine's prosecutors, police and mobile forensic teams are already compiling multi-thousand-page case files with OSINT, intercepts, body cam, drone metadata and rapid DNA. Their aim is not propaganda but chain of custody quality that survives appellate scrutiny, whether in Ukrainian courts or The Hague. Each small case underwrites a larger one up the chain of command. Each clip of Pokrovsk lane and the station supports an indictment that looks beyond trigger pullers. Second, hard accountability for enablers. The ICC warrants matter because they stigmatise travel and forced diplomatic costs, as seen when the court flagged Mongolia over non-cooperation. More such tests are coming. No one should pretend these warrants will handcuff a head of state tomorrow, but they change the risk calculus of officials, financiers and foreign partners today. They also keep faith with victims who expect the law to say their names. Third, air denial and adaptation. Pokrovsk makes the operational case for scaling counter-drone coverage, more electronic warfare kits on logistics routes, and layered point defence for humanitarian convoys. If FPVs are the main killer near the front, then jamming and hard-kill interceptors are not luxuries but civilian protection. That is not a political slogan, it follows from the UN casualty tables. Fourth, information hygiene. The enemy's theatre relies on cutting sequence, murder, upload, then flood the zone with selective welcomes when the city is emptied. Journalists and legislators should insist on an event timeline that mark the murders before the staged greetings. Pokrovsk's timeline should be taught with the lane, the station, the drones in the right order, so that no later footage can erase the first crime scene. Finally, moral clarity. Infiltrating a city, killing civilians on a quiet lane, then hiding in a railway station is not an ambiguous battlefield incident. Striking a UN convoy and posting the video is not an accident. The legal words are here to use: willful killing. On humanitarian action, attacks on humanitarian relief, terrorizing a civilian population. The right response is to say the words, gather the proofs, secure the skies and prosecute up the chain. Pokrovsk demands nothing less. We often ask whether any single atrocity will shift the trajectory of this war. Pokrovsk teaches a harder lesson. One atrocity will not, a ledger of them might. The task is to make sure that ledger is written in a courtroom's format, not only a history's format. Then the men who use drones to hunt and trucks and the aid trucks that were destroyed and deliberately attacked, and the men who sent infiltrators down a Ukrainian lane will face what they thought they had outrun: the slow, stubborn reach of law. And one of the problems that I think is particularly noticeable in the Russian situation is the way that Putin and his cronies have hidden behind the fog of the Gaza war. The fact that the West and America has tolerated the abuse perpetrated in Gaza by the IDF allows it, I think, to imagine that the West would tolerate the abuse perpetrated in Ukraine by the Russian forces. The bottom line has to be that that abuse and those war crimes will not be tolerated in either context. Just as we cannot tolerate the abuse and the slaughter of when that's done by terrorists on October the 7th. There has to be a fundamental and absolute principle that the targeting of civilians is wrong. We need to collect the evidence, and we need to bring those people who have willfully targeted civilians to trial and to judgment.